Sairam students, welcome to the fifth session of chapter 1, that is the living world, adaptations and classification. So before starting today's session children, let's revise what we had learnt in the last session. So in the last session children, we had seen about the adaptations in snowy regions, right? So which type of animals you find in snowy regions? Polar bear, Siberian husky dog, yak, right? So these animals, they have got thick long hair on their body, yes, which protects them from the snow. Also their body color is white or silver in color. Then children, we saw about the adaptation in aerial animals. So aerial animals are those which fly in the sky, right? So the birds, they are light in weight, right? They have got hollow bones, and these bones, they are light in weight, and that's the reason they can fly in the sky, right? And then they have got feathers on their body, they have got a spindle shaped body, right? Then we saw about insects. So insects also children, they can fly because their body is light in weight and both the ends are tapered, right? Then we took the example of bat is also light in weight and it can hang easily, right? Because of the patagium, right? There is a thin fold of skin called as patagium, with the help of which it can fly and hang. Then we took the then we saw about the adaptation in reptiles. So in reptiles also, reptiles mean children, they are crawling animals, right? So the snakes, they crawl with the help of the scales which are present on the skin, whereas the lizard, tortoise, right, they all crawl with the help of the muscles on this, with the help of the muscles, right? So this was all about we saw about the adaptation in aerial animals. So then we saw children about the adaptation for food in animals, right? So as I had told you, there are carnivorous and herbivorous types of animals. So depending upon there are special adaptations in each of these animals by which they can have their food easily, right? So as I told you, carnivorous animals, they can hunt their prey. Herbivorous animals, they depend upon the plants for food, right? Then we saw about the adaptation for blending with the surroundings. So there are some animals children, like your grasshopper, butterfly, lizard, right? So their color, it matches with the plants or the grasses, right? So they merge with the surroundings. Sometimes you cannot spot these grasshoppers, butterflies or the lizards which are present in the garden or in the surrounding because of the color, right? So today we'll see about children the Darwin's theory of evolution, right? So this is the scientist whose name is Darwin. So he was a biologist. So he made two principles children. One is theory of survival of fittest and the theory of selection. So let's see. So Charles Darwin, this scientist, he studied about different types of plants and animals, and then he made a first principle known as theory of survival of fittest. So what was this theory? Only those organisms are likely to survive which can best adapt themselves to the changing environment, right? So organisms, so these organisms will only survive who can adapt the changing environment, right? They can accept this changing environment and they get adjusted to that surrounding. Only those organisms can survive. So this was Darwin's first principle. So what is Darwin's first principle? It is the theory of survival of fittest. And what is that? Only those organisms are likely to survive which can best adapt themselves to the changing environment. Then let's see about his second principle. So the second principle is called as theory of natural selection. So what is that? If an organism is born with a new beneficial characteristic and is able to survive, this change is preserved in the next generation. So what happens when an organism is born, right? What happens? He is born with some new characteristic, and then with this new characteristic, if he is able to survive in this surrounding, then this change which is there of the new characteristic, that will be passed on to the next generation, right? That means that it will be passed on to the next generation, right? So that is called as the Darwin's second principle. So Darwin's second principle is theory of natural selection. So what is that? If an organism is born with new beneficial characteristic and is able to survive, this change is preserved in the next generation. Now, classification of living organisms. So, it is difficult for us to study and remember all the organisms in the living world, and that's the reason this classification was used. So, different scientists, what they used different criteria, and they started classifying the plants and animals themselves. So to avoid this confusion, what they did, a hierarchy was formed in the classification that starts with the kingdom Animalia or kingdom Plantae. Hierarchy means higher things wise, right? So as I told you, that there were many scientists who tried to classify these plants and animals. So, and to clear this confusion, what they did, they made a hierarchy for it. And what happened in this hierarchy or in this classification? So it started first with kingdom Animalia or kingdom Plantae, right? So groups and subgroups are formed depending upon the basic similarities and differences, called as hierarchy of classification. So in that, again, groups and subgroups are made. Reading about it, what similarities are there, what differences are there, right? So this is called as hierarchy of classification. So this is the hierarchy, right? Hierarchy, then what they have given, this is mango and this is human, right? Now hierarchy, how is it start? This is about the plant mango and this is about the human, right? Now hierarchy, how does it start? Kingdom Plantae, right? And human, it belongs to the kingdom Animalia, right? Whereas the mango, it belongs to the kingdom Plantae. Then what is the phylum? It is Anthophylla. And what is this? Chordata, right? Then the class, that means mango, it is a dicotyledonous plant, whereas human, it is a mammalia. Order, what is the order? It is Panindales, and human, it is primates. Then comes the family. Mango, it belongs to the family Anacardiaceae, and humans, it belongs to the family Hominidae, right? Then what is the genus? So genus is Magnifera for mango, and for humans it is Homo. And then last comes the species, that is Indica for mango and Sapiens for human. So on this basis the hierarchy was prepared. So if you can see here, the hierarchy starts with the kingdom Plantae or Animalia, right? Now in case of plants, it can start with Plantae, and in case of humans or animals, it will start with Animalia. So this is the hierarchy, right? Now we are going to see about the binomial nomenclature. So binomial nomenclature, it was done by Carl Linnaeus, right? So what he did, for identifying each an organism, this binomial nomenclature was used. So a scientific name has been given to each and every organism. Now how is this scientific name given? It consists of two parts. The first part is the genus and the second part is the species, right? So binomial nomenclature, this was done by the scientist Carl Linnaeus. So what he did, for identifying each and every organism, they gave a scientific name. So for giving this scientific name, they divided into two parts. So the first part was the genus and the second part was the species. Now here children, I'll give you one example. Now many a times in the class there are students with two names, means similar name, two students are there. Like suppose if I take the name Kabir, right? So there are two Kabirs in standard 7. So when I call out the name Kabir, so both the students will get up because both of their names are Kabir. But then if I say Kabir Khan or Kabir More, right? So then only one child will get up because I am taking the surname. So if I take the surname as Khan, so only Kabir Khan will get up. Kabir More will not get up. So same way this binomial nomenclature is, right? With the name and the surname, right? So all the identified organisms have been assigned a binomial name as per the guidelines of International Code of Nomenclature. So there is a system for it. International Code of Nomenclature, there are some guidelines. So depending on that, these organisms have been given a binomial name. All the organisms of a species are so similar irrespective of their differences in color, height, habits. They can reproduce among themselves and form new individuals like themselves, right? So you can see there are many organisms of the same type, but there is a difference in their color, difference in the height, difference in the habit, right? But they can reproduce, the reproduction capacity is there in them, right? And like this new individuals can be formed. Now these are some of the examples of the organisms from kingdom Plantae and Animalia, which are classified by the binomial method of nomenclature. So they have taken the first example of dog. So what is the scientific name given to the dog? It is Canis lupus familiaris, right? Now for the cow, what is the scientific name? Bos taurus. For hibiscus, the scientific name is Hibiscus rosa sinensis. And for jowar, the scientific name is Sorghum bicolor, right? So we generally call dog, cow, hibiscus, jowar by these names. We never call by the scientific names because scientific names, they are difficult to pronounce and it is difficult to remember, right? But each and every organism has got a scientific name, right? So like this we can find out scientific names of many plants and animals which are there in our surroundings. Now 29th April, it is observed as the World Frog Protection Day, right? So we have to protect the frogs, right? We are not supposed to kill it or harm it, because if we do like that, then you will be punished. So this is killing or harming the frogs. It is prohibited by the Wildlife Protection Act, right? So you are not supposed to kill the frogs, and 29th April you can observe it as the World Frog Protection Day. So with this children, we finish our first chapter, the living world, adaptations and classification. So let's recap what we have learned today. So today children, first we saw about the Darwin's theory of evolution, right? So Darwin, he was a scientist. He was mainly a biologist who had two principles. One is Darwin's first principle, right? The first principle is known as the theory of survival of fittest, right? And the second principle was theory of natural selection, right? So he made two principles. So what was Darwin's first principle, children? Only those organisms are likely to survive which can best adapt themselves to the changing environment. And what was Darwin's second principle? If an organism is born with a new beneficial characteristic and is able to survive, then this change, it is preserved in the next generation. Then children, we saw about the classification of living organisms. So all the living organisms, they are classified depending upon their hierarchy. So a hierarchy is prepared depending upon the kingdom Animalia or kingdom Plantae, right? Then we saw children about the binomial nomenclature, right? It was identified by the scientist Carl Linnaeus. So each and every organism has been given a scientific name, right? So while giving this scientific name, it is divided into two parts. First part is the genus and the second part is the species, right? So each and every living organism has got a scientific name, and this is as per the guidelines of the International Code of Nomenclature. And lastly children, we saw that 29th April, it is observed as the World Frog Protection Day. So you are not supposed to kill or harm these frogs. So in the next session children, we'll start with a new chapter. Till then, goodbye.